Yeah, this building doesn't
Said
say
someone will be
home.
here.
No,
Not
sorry,
at
I
all.
had a family emergency.
Yeah.
And
We'll
there's
have to
AC.
look at it online then.
Yeah.
Do you need
AC.
paper?
No. I'm so slow at paper. I'll just look at
Hey, couple classrooms, why not?
it.
Oh,
I am super slow. I have to type everything. Didn't have typing accommodations when I was in school. Otherwise, I would have hopped right on. Typed all my stuff. Hello.
Hey.
can't see you way over there. Sometimes
that by
it's a better
design?
thing if you can't see anybody. Greg's like right in line with me. It's not cool.
Oh, yeah, every time we come in, that's
Here we go.
It's even got the Norse colors.
So as soon as you start talking, he's gonna turn that volume off, so you can go.
All you do is that left hand door when you leave.
Flip the bar.
Check the handle, make sure it locks. Here you go.
Perfect. Thanks, Ed.
Enjoy the room.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as soon as you start talking, that's when he's gonna go.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. This is a regular local Southampton School Committee meeting, June 23rd, 2021. The time's 5:30 p.m. The meeting's being held at Southampton Town Hall, Room 1. It's being live broadcast on Channel 191 and will be available within 24 to 48 hours for a rebroadcast or watching via YouTube off the town website. We have all current members of the school committee are here. Approval of the minutes. I believe we have the minutes. No?
I have no minutes to submit for approval this meeting.
Public comment. Any member of the public at this point can be recognized for up to 3 minutes to speak on any topic. Seeing none. Visitors, I would just like to welcome Dr. Bonneville, the incoming superintendent, who goes on the payroll in a week, so we'll go easy on her right now. No correspondence. Brings us the principal's report.
Hello, Eliza Pluta, principal at Norris School. I have a curriculum update. We have purchased the Open Court Reading Program. This is a research-based program which uses explicit and systematic approach to reading. Some of our staff changes coming into the summer. Congratulations to Leslie DeCurcio Mara and Dar Cody Houghton, who will be retiring from Norris School tomorrow. It's their last day. Mr. Joe Moynihan is a grade 4 teacher. He will be moving on to an assistant principal position in an elementary school. Mrs. Patty Murray, our school library technology teacher, has accepted a position in the eastern part of the state. Some of the spring activities that we were participating in this spring, the Southampton Police Department visited with all kindergarten classes outside of Norris School as part of their community helpers unit. The Holyoke Gas and Electric completed their gas safety presentation to children in grades K through 2. We had a wonderful grade 6 step-up day this past Monday, where we held this event outside. And I would like to say congratulations to the following award winners. The Beverly Larrabee Award went to Maggie Lashway. The Barbara Chevrolet Award went to Sophia Tremblay. And the Shirley Anup Social Studies Award went to Colin Westcott. So congratulations to those 6th graders moving on. Our enrollment is the same as it was last month. We have 468 total students, with 432 of them being in person in K to 6. 27 students were remote by the end of the year, 6 that are just coming for drop-in services, and 3 out-of-district students. I would like to give a special thank you to Mr. Michael Sullivan for his leadership, guidance, and support this school year. Special thank you to our school nurses for their ongoing commitment to our students and families during this unprecedented year. And many thanks to our teachers and staff who have worked tirelessly this year to continue the learning whether we were at home or in school. So that concludes my principal's report.
Any questions? No? Superintendent's report?
Okay, Nice to see you all in person. I have 4 items. The first one is about budget. I wanted to say that all of the schools' FY22 budgets have been passed at their respective town meetings. However, you all know well that the noes were the majority for Southampton's Proposition 2.5 override. And I wanted you to make sure you knew, and this probably comes up later in the meeting, but administration has already begun acting on some of our budget plans that we have for this scenario. And I provided some information along with my report about what that is planned to look like. Also, I wanted to mention that at the state level, there is now a conference committee between the House and the Senate hammering out a final state education budget, which is due out in early July. And the state has confirmed the final ESSER 3 funds for Norris School, which will be $244,000. And we will have through September of 2024 to use those funds. That will be important because they play an integral part in kind of responding to our funding shortfall. And that amount will be in addition to the ESSER 2 funds, which are $114,500 for the district. My second item, I just wanted to mention that Dr. Bonneville and I have been meeting a lot recently, including about 3 hours, was that yesterday? Working on the transition. One of the concrete things we've been doing is working with Bobby to make the shift in central office jobs and personnel. I keep wanting to say Deanna. Dr. Bonneville is in the middle of looking at applications for a new executive assistant, which is added to our budget. Also, we are shifting some of the work so that Denise Cashin can do some more higher level accounting work, so that Bobby in turn is able to do more higher level work in terms of strategic work, really, for financial budget planning and so on. In addition to that, we're realigning the jobs so that the support staff in the office specialize in the type of work they do, like human resources or accounts receivable and that kind of thing, versus supporting municipals or supporting regional schools. So that we're going to eliminate that redundancy and have people more specialized in the type of work they do across districts. And everybody, including those people, are on board with that plan, and we're looking forward to making that shift. In terms of staffing, I just wanted to make sure the school committee knew that all of the central office administrators have signed the contracts offered by the school committees. So everyone's all set to go for the next fiscal year. Also, Lauren Holtz has been named the interim principal for the middle high school, and we're very excited about that. And to replace her for the coming year, Alex Seid has been hired as an assistant principal. He comes to us from Springfield, where he's been a secondary science teacher for about 18 years, most recently at Chestnut Academy. Does that sound like the right name? Okay.
Got it.
Yep. And then my last item is I just wanted to mention from the Department of Ed, DESE has been working to support summer programming around the state. They've got models about how they think it should look, and they're encouraging us to do the best we can to catch up on learning loss. They also understand teachers need a break, and so what they are recommending for a model for summer programming is late August, mid-August work, and also considering intensive tutoring as opposed to classroom approaches to summer school. I think that that's a good research-based approach to things. They also are highly supportive of continuing to support students in the fall in terms of their social and emotional well-being. And we need to expect that there will be kids and adults that really need us to help them establish a strong sense of community and support networks when we return to school. Also, DESE has made clear that they don't support and won't support the idea of remote learning as an ongoing model of teaching and learning when the school year starts, except for those specialized couple of schools that the state has that do virtual learning as a model. And in terms of mask wearing, DESE plans later in the summer to have guidance for what the fall should look like in terms of responding to the pandemic. They feel it's too early to make any commitments about that now. And in terms of how, they were clear we all needed to wear masks until school ended, and school has now ended. What's a little gray, as it often is with the state, is their guidance for summer school. And they are encouraging districts to continue to have mask wearing take place during summer school, but it's not a requirement. And I think this will probably come up later in the agenda. The administration has a recommendation for your consideration along those lines. So that's my report.
Any questions?
I was gonna about the mask, but that's on the agenda later anyways, right?
Correct, under summer school. I have just a follow-up question is regarding central office and the realignments and all that. Is there a targeted date when you're going to be 75% or greater at that point? Or by September 1st, do you plan on having this all ready?
Oh, yeah, I think I think by July 1, Taffy's moving her desk over to a new location, I think tomorrow. And I think as soon as Deanna hires, and I don't know who else will join her in the hiring process, but as soon as that new admin assistant is on board, I think the shifting will continue. And Bobby might have more info. There may be, as some people pick up new skills, I'm sure there's going to need to be a little bit of overlap for a time.
Right, so I think once we get the new administrative assistant in place, and we get them comfortable and trained and settled, then we can start to shift the other responsibilities among the 3 that are in there and get that shift. And I'm hoping definitely by September 1 that we'll be settled in and ready to roll with the new.
And your comfort level that this whole process will assist in the budget process all next year, and moving things along?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm pretty comfortable. I mean, I think, it remains to be seen. You have to it's gonna take a while to work out some of the kinks, I think, but, yeah.
Okay.
I already have, Denise is probably already doing double duty for me as it stands, so, she deserves a lot of credit for this past year. She really had to put in a lot. She put in a lot of extra hours, a lot of extra time just to help me out, so, yeah.
Okay. Yes. That brings us under budgets. So first we'll see, is there any transfers for us to consider on the?
Yep, those are being passed down now. And this is a fun looking one. You'll see in a minute. Not really fun, but. I got a couple extra too, if anyone needs them. Everybody get one?
Yep.
So we can go over the line item transfers after, but we'll look at the line item budget on the next page after that. And what I'm gonna draw your attention to is the column S, the budget balance. And it doesn't matter really what page you look at. If you look at it, you're gonna see it's gonna be 0. This is one of the first years ever that I have seen that we have actually completely spent our budget, and there's gonna be a few shifts, which I will bring back in August when we meet next, or July, whenever we're meeting, probably August, because it'll take a while to shake things out, but there's some encumbrances that might change, there's some bills that might come in that aren't reflected here, and there's a little bit more of shakeout to do with the grants. We have overspent a couple of the grants, so I may need to shift that back in. And as we were aware, we knew that we may need to check into the school choice account to add some monies, which still may be a possibility. And that was due to the 41K in the iWave machines. And then we had extra costs due to COVID. So if you just want to look through these pages, and then if anybody has any questions, I can
So
answer
you
those.
reached, the end result of column S being all zeros is directly related to all these line transfers on the first page?
Yeah, and the
to
fact
achieve
that
that.
that we actually spent every penny of it at this point. There are encumbrances, of course, that may shake out differently. But you will see that on line 256, which is on page 4, at the bottom, it says total general fund, because it includes the transportation, which is really a separate budget with the town. There is a balance there of 48,107. And if we do need some money, I may just contact the town and see if they want to kick that in to the general fund to, I don't know if they can, but we could check, so.
So do you know the details on why, regular teacher line, which I'm assuming is salaries for our FTE, our teachers, why we had to increase that by $21,000?
Because earlier on in the year, I had decreased it, and I decreased it before some of the positions were filled. So I just had to back that out. So there really is no increase to that line. There's actually a little bit excess if you look. I think we had, I had decreased it by 36,685 in two previous line item or quarterly reports. And I just increased it by 21. So there really was money left in that line.
Okay. Questions?
Do we usually see an excess with the transportation, or is that just with the change in the distance from the school that was the?
Yeah, we don't typically see, sometimes we do see somewhat of a excess, but not usually this big. And it was just due to the COVID. I think they switched up and they didn't charge so much. Because, well, at first they weren't transporting with anybody within the 2 miles. So their routing was it was a lot different this year. So that would not be typical to see that savings.
We wouldn't expect that next year, is what we're thinking. This would be a one-time
savings?
savings, yeah.
I mean, there may be, because I always put in a little bit of, there may be some, but I always put in a little bit for, there's a allowance for fuel escalation. But we have not used that in any year that I've been here so far, so. But you have to have it in there in case, but it wouldn't be huge.
Just on the school bus question, is this the year that we renew the contracts?
Yes, I believe this is our last year, 22, I think, is our last year in the current contract.
So I know some of the drivers announced that next year they'll all have new buses.
Ooh, nice. That means that.
I know.
Do you negotiate that? This district doesn't work jointly with other neighboring districts or anything?
We have in the past, we've tried doing it with Easthampton. It got really confusing, and it really didn't make any savings difference. So no, we go out to bid, but we typically only get one bidder, which is too bad.
Yeah.
But I think they've been really good about staying honest, even knowing that they're the only bidder, typically, so.
So procedurally wise, if there's no other questions, we have to have a vote. We have to vote to authorize these transfers in order for Bobby to complete, close out the year and do her year-end reports.
So are we taking a batch or are we going line by line?
Well, I would suggest we just take it all for the full $127,986 unless there's a line item you don't want to transfer.
So I move that we accept these transfers as presented.
For a second,
I'll second.
Discussion? None? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
So I'm gonna send around one copy for signature so that as we're in person, we don't have to use doc cards or anything. Oh. Sorry.
Okay.
Next is fiscal year 2022, our continued discussion.
Well,
Well, I mean,
Yes.
I'll start, I guess, because this is news, brand new. I mean, we've been planning for this, but the news is less than 24 hours old, so we haven't had a meeting. We discussed a little bit this morning going forward with our plans, and the document that you see here is a familiar one. We've used it for the last few meetings to talk about where reductions would need to be made, painful reductions, and you all came up with a strategy, which it's now time to implement, which really, there's three pieces to it, just for people that aren't looking at the document. The first thing is there were $200,000 of new requests we had in mind for the coming year, and those came right off the top of what we aren't going to do. And then we have $235,000 worth of reductions to existing services. And I'm sure might want to we'll talk about those specifically in a few minutes. And then the third category is the use of those federal COVID relief funds called ESSER grant money, which totals $358,000, of which we plan to use $190,000 in the coming year to pay for the salaries of existing staff. One of the things that's really troublesome going forward is using $200,000 to pay for salaries for 1 year, maybe two, is not a sustainable way to, fund this school going forward. So that's going to present a challenge. And then we could review what the reductions are. John did a nice job with that at the last meeting. I don't know if you want me to just read to you the reductions or whether that's necessary this evening.
No, I think we probably jump into discussion.
Okay.
One of my first questions is, the committee was aware of potentially 2 pending retirements, which have now become public. So there's 2 retirements. And we also have 2 members that are not retiring but are transferring to other districts or outside of ours. So that's 4 positions. What, if any, impact or change does that cause here? For example, I believe, without getting into names, one of the individuals that's transferring was maxed out on the scale. So does that have a factor whatsoever? Or what are your thoughts, if anybody?
I think that my position is to continue to post these positions to hire people and hope that they come in lower on the salary schedule. I don't know I can't say that I absolutely will hire, new people. Depends on the pool of candidates.
I guess I as one committee member, I have a hard time agreeing to eliminate, and I know this has to be done tonight, whatever we're gonna do. But I have a hard time eliminating the music and I guess, does this mean that the art program would be eliminated? Because that's one of the retirements. Or is it the initial thought was that we're gonna continue to have art because that's one of the jobs? I guess maybe I should ask the question, what is posted?
Nothing is posted yet.
What do you plan on posting?
Well, I thought I was posting for what the committee had voted on previously. And I didn't think I had any wiggle room with that.
So would that mean keeping the art program?
Yes.
Okay.
So just to be clear, because it's not necessarily written very clearly, it says reduce 1 faculty FTE, music teacher to 0.2, but there isn't currently a music teacher. The plan is to not have music next year and save that salary, but to provide the necessary schedule so that teachers have the prep time contractually required and so on. We do need to expand the equivalent of a .2 position for the students' specials, and that was going to be an increase in art. So art will actually have an increase of .2 overall, and music, there won't be a music
So
program.
does that make art 1.2?
Yes,
Correct. With
One
probably
person?
two different
Oh.
people.
yeah, two different
No
people,
overtime?
yeah.
Because if we just kept a .2 of music, it means that every student would have music once a month. And that really isn't gonna provide much of music. So instead, in order to comply with the contractual prep time, we would hire a .2 of an art teacher so that everybody gets art every week, like they would before, and have those specialist teachers, art, gym, and library technology. Of course, when we made all those decisions, I didn't know the library technology teacher was leaving.
Right.
And now there are plenty of things that could be done. I just didn't know if I
Well,
had.
and I think that's one of the, so that's my next question. Yeah, I mean, thank you for answering about the art and what your plan is on that, but library technology, is that something that now that you have, that was a retirement?
No,
That was a transfer to somewhere else,
Right.
right? So now that is known, is that the best use of our dollars, funding that position again? We need all the positions, I get that, 100%, I understand that.
Especially with preps, we know that part too.
But,
A lot of school systems have eliminated library. I think that's where you're stemming from. I know several districts that, I mean, nobody wants that to go,
right, but,
but that
and this
usually is
position wasn't just library, it's library technology.
technology, yeah.
so what is technology?
I mean, I'm not able to probably tell you exactly what she does right now, I wasn't prepared for this, but she does coding with some of the grade levels. She has done integration of library and technology research projects, using the standards for students to be able to stand and deliver and be able to present a research project to others. Lots of things that I probably am just forgetting about right now, but it's a very hard decision. And, I feel like the voters knew when they went to the ballot box that they were losing the music program. They didn't know that they might be not having a library. So I don't really know what the right answer is. I was just going with what you had voted previously.
Right, this was the blueprint that we had,
Yep.
and now that, the reality is that we have to find 629,000. My guess is a lot of these, if not all of these, are gonna stay just as is. But tonight would be the night to make a change, if that's what the committee wants to do, because we have the hard results of the election.
So, go ahead.
I guess I was just gonna ask if, I mean, because this is, because of the personnel changes, the people changes, which we couldn't really plan for, right? Because they're brand new, I don't know if you, and I wouldn't wanna have Eliza make an analysis off the cuff, right? So if you, and because we're talking about nobody being pink slipped here. For example, so if you're talking about would the community prefer children have a music program versus library and technology, that doesn't necessarily need to be decided this evening because it doesn't involve a layoff. And so if you wanted to either give administration the leeway to decide that, or you would like to reconvene at a time after she's been able to study it a bit, she could, you could come back and have that presented to you and make a decision. So, I mean, it seems like a significant topic, so I don't know. Those could be options.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, is there any validity to the idea of, instead of doing 2 art positions, doing 1 full art and a .2 library tech for older grades that are getting the coding and the comm skills? I don't know how, I'm trained to be optimistic, and then I'm at heart a realist. So I never planned on using this plan, right? Because we were getting that override passed. We had good people in town that valued education above keeping $200 in their pocket. But it turns out we don't have that town. We don't even have a town where voters show up. Apparently, they just don't care. So now it's more of a reality where I have to sit and stomach this, where before I was just kind of being optimistic with it. So I think that's where my questions stem from. So like, for example, by losing a reading and interventionist, does that mean we have 0 or does that mean we have 1?
We have 2 reading interventionists now at the lower grades, and then we had a reading interventionist that was going to focus on the upper grades.
So we're losing
Now
the
we're
upper
losing
grade
the
person.
upper grade one, yes.
And what is the option of keeping the reading interventionist, reading intervention position and not filling the library? And it comes down to, it sounds like, coverage for specials, coverage for prep.
Right.
So
Can they do reading intervention during prep time?
No,
It's right, it's coverage for whole
the whole
classes.
class.
Whole class needs to be off doing something while the classroom teacher.
Well, because one of the things that we were talking about this year was that we were doing tier 1 interventions, which I know is less fun than music. We're sucking the fun out of some of the stuff, but
It's not
But-
intervention if they're covering an entire classroom.
Right.
It'd be intervention, small group, it wouldn't be a whole classroom coverage.
reading special.
but wasn't some of the lower grade interventionists, weren't they
We were
doing stuff with
Whole
full
group
class?
only because of COVID and because
Yeah.
kids couldn't
You
Okay.
couldn't sit
Yeah.
next to people then.
sit next to me.
Gotcha.
I mean, there are so many different scenarios, and like I said, I didn't know if the vote was just last night, so yes, I've been thinking. And the music program at Norris School funnels into the music program at Hampshire Regional, and we have a really good relationship with the Hampshire Regional Music Program. So if there was something that we could save and we could put music back and then not have library technology, I would be okay with that. Not that I'm okay with anything, but, that's something that I do think about. I think about the students at Norris School leaving Norris and going to Hampshire, and the band teacher was already starting to come down and do, have instrumental music with some of the kids after school. And all of that has been gone this year because of COVID. And then, so we lost a whole year. We would just continue to lose music at Norris. So, yeah.
And this is the cycle. The biggest core of children that are gonna end up at Hampshire Regional
Right.
have the least amount of services in their lower grades. So when they get to Hampshire Regional, it's an additional burden. And
Now
the
they
cycle
need the
just
extra
goes. So,
boost.
I'm still in the position, I believe that the arts and the music and the gym and technology all need to be there. And I would rather see larger classes and a shift on that side. I'm in the minority, I was
Okay, I
last
won't
time,
agree.
and that's fine, but the contract says we can go up to an average of like 24 kids. The last plan I saw, we were sitting at 16. So, the technology piece with the library, is that something that can go to our halftime technology person? It's not a question for me to answer. I don't know about certifications and licensing. But, are there other ways to do it without cutting any services? But time is also not on our side here.
Yeah.
So,
My
Well,
school has a volunteer come in and do the technology piece. We lost our library program, and she was library and technology, so with the 3 upper grades with 4th, 5th, and 6th, we had a volunteer from the local library that came and did the technology piece, not as it wasn't
Not especially.
during like the teacher prep, it was in addition to, so they were still getting that extra technology piece, and it usually happened about once a week. Don't know how our.
and the technology,
Yes, but-
I'm sorry, the technology
They might
piece, that's part of the teacher certification, right? You've got to be in that teacher bucket to
To
do
be a
the
technology
technology.
teacher, yes.
So there probably isn't a librarian / technology person over at the Edwards Library that could come over 2 days a week and do it.
Right, not certified, probably not, but I don't know.
What, Michael? I cut you off.
Well, I just wanted to respond to your, increasing average class size with the structure of school, as you know, you can't it's not like you can staff it so that class sizes across all grades go up some. When we looked at that together, what we saw was the least painful place would have been the fifth grade, having, not adding a teacher and having class size of, I think it was going to be 25 or something. So that could allow you to have increased staffing somewhere else, but that you all, as a group, that was not what you wanted to do before, at least. So you could revisit that. The other thing seems to be really the music, returning music instead of library technology would be your other thing to consider. And still, either way, probably needing the additional 0.2 of art. Yeah.
And do we have a current para vacancy?
Do we have well, we have, yes, we will.
We will.
So we won't actually cut a body, it will cut a position, yes.
Which is good.
And
That isn't needed.
Well, it's,
Is needed.
well, yeah.
a person is
We could use
leaving,
more.
so there won't need to be a riff.
But do we know whether it's a general or special?
Well, I couldn't cut a special ed, I mean.
Right. So it's coming out of
Everything
general
just
ed.
shifts so that all IEPs and students that need support will be covered, yeah.
Yeah. So is it, all right. Yeah.
That's where I start.
Yeah.
So if there's 3 specials, are you doing like an ABC rotation?
Well, that's why I need the 0.2. Because there are 1, 2, 3 grade levels that have 4 classes.
I asked them all about the ABC and they didn't know what I meant, and I knew you would, so.
Other discussion?
Is this something that we have to decide, or can we leave this to administration to just do what's best for the numbers and who is, if there's a vacancy, then you do what you need for your school? I feel like that's where I would sit on this. Because you know what's happening with your staff more than we do. I want music, I want art, I want
Want it
the
all.
specials, I want it all.
You know,
And I don't want kids sitting on top of each other in class because it's integrated, they're integrated classrooms. So,
Right. And if we follow this course in 2 years, we're gonna lose the adjustment counselor, the assistant principal, and half a nurse.
Well, or we have to reallocate.
it sounds like we may have to do the 5th and 6th grade is higher class sizes, keep the younger groups, that might be something that Principal Pluta has to decide and do. But I don't want to lose an adjustment counselor, and I don't want to lose.
But I feel like
This
5th and
position.
6th are getting left out on everything. They're getting a less intervention, they're getting less support. So if you're adding to their class size and giving them less support, what does that do for them? They're gonna support the ones on the IEPs, and those kids that are just doing okay are just gonna be, you're just okay, because there's not enough staff to cover them. And if they're in a class size that big with no extra support, I mean, you're already taking away their intervention.
So would you want the administration to consider something different than what's on here right now?
No, I just didn't agree with the larger class size because we're already taking away the intervention no matter what from the upper grades and we're giving it to the younger. So I just feel like with a large classroom and no intervention, that's not gonna work.
Well, I know you probably know this as an educator, but just so the public knows, the reason that we're focusing more of the resources on the lower grades is the optimism that investing early means a greater return, so that when those kids are in the upper grades, they're not behind. That's the optimistic view. We know that there's always struggles at every level, but that was the.
Which I
seems to be
agree,
the
and I
thinking.
agree with the intervention going towards the little ones, which is why I don't agree with larger upper class size.
Yeah.
I agree that they need the intervention first, but I feel like they're already put so far behind from the COVID deficits that we already had and the things they've already been through, that to go have no support system and have this giant class size of at least 26 was the last time we looked at the numbers. That's not gonna work for the kids that are just doing okay.
Currently, there are 76 kids going into 5th grade, so if we did 3 classes, it would be, what, 25, 26.
And we're capped at 25, I think, right?
Correct.
No, we're not. It's the cumulative average of all the classrooms at Norris. That average has to be less than 25.
Okay.
It's still not ideal.
Yeah, 25 is a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess I would, just, I think my thought is kind of along Julianne's is administration continues with this as its template, but doesn't consider it etched in stone. So if they see a different path, that should go, and it doesn't deviate too far out of these lanes, they should proceed accordingly. Later on, we're going to talk about not meeting in the month of July unless needed. So perhaps the committee itself will be fine if administration just communicates with the chair, if there's a quick change or decision that they need. And then I can just update you guys independently. But I'm not a fan of using the ESSER funds for the purposes as laid out here. I understand why we need to do it, and I get it, it buys us a year. But I don't think this can be our solution next year. Secondly, and this kind of goes more to budget, Avi, is that I'm not a fan of, just in general, of using, in this case, school choice funds for positions. And I know it's how it's always done in that. It's, I'm just saying going forward, that's going to be a topic I'm going to keep looking towards. I'm okay with curriculum, and we use all school choice funds, for curriculum supplies and things like that. But it really became obvious in this exercise where there was a position that is nowhere in our budget, but we know we have it. Well, it's in school choice. Oh, okay. And then we had to have a whole conversation whether or not we should have that position or not. And I feel we do because of our size. If our enrollment ever dropped below 300, then perhaps we wouldn't need it. But Norris is just too large to have one person on the ground every day. Is everyone comfortable with that approach for administration?
Yep.
If you are.
Okay. I don't think we need a vote on it. Just
Nope.
continue that
Yep.
path? Okay. And then, of course, communication to the parents. And whenever it becomes available, whether it's in August or so, maybe a flash, we may not have all the new parents' email addresses of new ones coming in, but if we can do like a midsummer update out to parents, this is where we are, here's the impact. Anything else on, I have a separate question on the fiscal year 2022. Has there been any official communication to central office from the town on the use of the $1.9 million American Recovery Funds that the town is supposed to be receiving in July?
No.
No.
So we should keep that on our radar.
And American Recovery Funds are separate from ESSER.
Correct. Those are funds that are coming into municipalities based on the population, I believe. That's how they did the calculation.
The thing I don't know about that is what the use will be for them, because we are getting the ESSER 3
Right.
and the ESSER 2, which is like our piece of that American Recovery pot.
Reports of committee. We'll defer on the Hampshire Regional School Committee. Collaborative.
They're meeting right now, so as soon as our meeting gets changed to, it's gonna be the second Wednesday of the month, then I don't think the meetings will overlap and I'll be able to attend them. They did appoint an executive director whose name is Dr. Todd Gazda, so he'll be the new executive director for the collaborative. So, but they're meeting right now. I've not been very successful at making it to all the meetings. I just made it to one, so next year will be a good change for the meeting times.
Was he the Ludlow superintendent?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
PTO.
They had their final meeting. They went over the last of their finances. They did use some money to help out with the bounce houses for the Little Field Day events. They are hoping that next year it's more normal of a year and that they'll be able to do a whole lot more fundraising. And they are really hoping to get the Holiday Bazaar back. That was huge for Norris, so they're hoping that will be allowed, but no one knows the answer to that yet. They are not meeting till the beginning of the school year. They have a few parents now that are interested in shadowing for the positions to hopefully step up and volunteer.
Okay, school council?
School council had its last meeting of the year in June, directly preceding I think it was the joint 5-town committee discussion. That was very interesting. It seems like the curriculum planning process for the reading curriculum went really well. And there was a finalist decided, and there seemed to be, I mean, you could give this report better than me, but there seemed to be buy-in from staff, excitement, and hopefully leading to a standardization of interventions given across grades and classrooms with respect to the newest cutting-edge research and how children learn to read. Which is what we always like to see, evidence-based methods. So that was the main issue discussed.
Okay. Select board representative is not present, and nor is the association president.
The 5 district.
Present. 5 district isn't here. It's going to come up under
Okay.
new business, letter D. Which brings us to old business. Old business, we deferred the bus radius change for the new school year till tonight to discuss.
We went all the way down to 1 mile,
Perfect.
Awesome.
and there haven't been any issues. It's been great.
Except for the part, there's still the driving issues that everyone brings up.
How was the line with the 1 mile radius?
Right, still have a lot of
Still
parents
huge.
dropping off.
A lot of parents cheating on the time that you requested that they show up. I've noticed
2 o'clock, there's
because
some that are out there at 2.
I have to circle the block several times when I show up at the appointed time.
We appreciate that. The police department does too.
Yes. Although, if they issued tickets,
I know.
we could solve this budget process problem.
And make our budget.
Yeah. Do you have a thought or a recommendation on where it should be come September 1st or the first day of school?
Back to normal.
So everybody, even if you live across the street.
I don't know about that.
That's where it was.
That's where it was.
Yeah.
They cut out a lot of cul-de-sacs, didn't they?
Some they did, yes.
Because there was a
some
lot
they
of
did.
complaints at the beginning of the year.
Some they did.
But when you
Yeah,
know,
half a mile. Right next to the school sounds a little much. If your
Yes,
There are no
neighbors-
sidewalks. I mean,
it's the sidewalks, it's
There are
Gun
no
Road.
sidewalks. Gun Road Extension, no
From that
sidewalks.
way,
So
I guess.
it
I was
just-
on
it's-
Pomeroy, there is.
Yeah.
Usually space hasn't been an issue, right?
right,
Even with folks that are right next to the school taking the bus.
So then why, if that's the recommendation of administration, then why don't we vote, since we put the restriction in place, why don't we vote to return the bus pickup radius to pre-pandemic levels? So the way it was before the pandemic hit.
it's school choice.
Well,
And school choice if they can make it to a designated bus stop.
I can't remember if they were paying.
I think they were.
I think they
Yeah.
were.
A
I think
fee.
school of
There was a
choice.
fee.
Yeah.
Right, but they still have to get
So it's gonna
to
be-
whatever the
right.
bus stop is, right?
Can I bring something up that's,
Touchy.
yeah, maybe.
Sure.
So there has been some complaints about where one of the bus stops are, where a lot of the school choice kids get on.
Okay.
And some of the family that live at that stop are complaining because they drive on their driveway or their lawn and they back into their driveway. And then we moved it at one point and then that section started complaining. So I had checked in with Michael to see if we could make a stop at, no, I'm not gonna think of the place, but it is just outside of Southampton.
Like a business? Like a
Yeah,
parking
it's
lot?
near Dunkin' Donuts, but down, that little mall
County
there.
Road
Yeah,
or Hampton Ponds Plaza?
that's it,
Hampton
that's
Ponds.
one, yep.
Well, that would be a good idea.
So we're gonna move that stop there, so it's not affecting families, but it is outside of the district, but.
So the bus would have to pull off of 202 into Hampton Ponds Plaza and then pull back onto 202?
And they were okay with that.
Oh.
They did not like the idea of.
Because they're going
Dunkin'
into the parking lot. They're not pulling over
Dunkin'
the side
Donuts
of the
parking
road.
lot's a little
Right,
harder to
going
get
into
in
the
and out
parking.
of.
Is there any risk or liability, I mean, to allow?
No, as long as there's not, as long as it's not a safety risk, there's not any kind of statutory reason the bus couldn't leave the town to pick kids up and re-enter the
There's a
town.
town bus stop right there. Like, there's a PVTA pickup spot right there, where they wouldn't even have to pull into a parking lot. Like, right by the boat ramp, there's like a whole spot right there. And it's a PVTA pickup spot.
But wouldn't you want elementary school kids into like a parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
it
what I
is
was
hard to get out of. I've pulled
In
them
the
out
morning.
before.
I wonder if the
But if the bus driver doesn't mind.
motion that I was thinking of is to lift the restrictions rather than to specify a specific policy. And that way it would just defer to administration in the absence of a specific directive.
So you're motioning to lift the restriction and to permit a school choice bus pickup outside the boundaries of the town of Southampton. That's your
Yes.
motion?
And for a fee.
4 feet for what?
Huh?
4 feet.
4 feet for what?
For a fee.
Oh.
For feet.
I thought he said 4 feet.
We have
You can only
PTSD
pick up
there
on the
for
bus.
me.
4 feet outside of our boundary. It will not
Most of them
exceed
are at
4
4
feet.
feet
I thought you were channeling Mr. Bennett there. For an additional fee to be set by administration.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. New business, summer school update.
Oh,
Believe you have a schedule in place?
how do you know?
A lot of commotion on Facebook.
We have two summer schools running side by side at the same time. One is the special ed program that we normally run, and one is the after-school, out-of-school time grant-funded summer school. There are 28 students enrolled and have said yes to come to the special ed program, and there are 24 students that have enrolled and are saying yes to attend the after-school, out-of-school time grant-funded program. 54 were invited. So if we don't hear, we've been asking different students. If these students say no, we try to reach out to other students, but we haven't heard from many of them. So we're ready to go. Classrooms have been picked out in the coolest spots of the building. And teachers from Norris are working the after-school time funded one, and many teachers who are not from Norris are coming in to work the special ed one, and we have paraprofessionals also working. So all students who have IEPs who have to have extended year have been invited to come, and we will be meeting the needs of their IEP.
Could you clarify, so are they both happening at the same time?
They are, yeah.
Even though we're
Same
calling it
time.
after school?
Yeah,
That's just the
it's
name of the
summer.
funding
It's
source.
yeah,
gotcha.
it's just, yeah,
Summers.
Okay.
extended summer school.
And those are AMs? They're gonna be the morning,
Both 9 to
morning
12.
hours? Yeah. With or without busing? And if it's with busing, is it already covered?
The problem is that when the grant was written, we wrote in transportation for the extended after-school time grant. And so we will provide a bus to those who want it. So we're asking parents if they would like transportation. There is no money to transport the special ed students to come, and we've never had transportation for special ed students. However, depending on how many students come to the other program, we may offer it to the special ed students. And it also depends on where they live, because we only have enough money for one bus.
Yeah.
So that one bus cannot go to both ends of Southampton and make it to school by 9 o'clock.
In the off chance that a child who's on IEP that has extended school year and has busing in their
They would
IEP,
have-
they would be
They
covered.
would have to get it, yes,
Okay. Regardless of whether they're on that single bus.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And that money's already accounted for if it's needed.
We don't have anyone.
Okay. All right. I think this is probably an appropriate spot to talk about the maths for summer school. So everybody received the memo dated June 23rd with the three, I don't want to call them options, but are they options?
Components, I guess it's.
The three components, and had time to look at it? Yep, okay. And administration is recommending, well, a communication went out to the 5 chairs, asking them for, sharing this document and then asking them to give some general feedback in that. I know two of the chairs answered, one myself, specifically thinking, knowing that I don't believe we're gonna be able to have air conditioning, right? Because my thought was the override would pass and we have the ESSER funds to do it, and that's not on the table. Perhaps the American Recovery Act money, but we'd have to order the machines this week in order to get, and I don't see that happening. So no AC. Has there been any change in the guidance of the use of fans directing airflow towards children? Or can it still only be directed out the windows?
I think you can do what you'd like with fans at this point.
Okay. And the mere fact that this is a 3-week program starting in July, chances are there's gonna be 90 degree temperature days in there, and we can't cancel it because I don't believe you can just add it on to the, and it's gotta happen in the 3 weeks, right?
And it's a half day.
And it's a half day in the morning
And
when
it's
it's
not
cooler.
upstairs.
Correct. But some of this is reading and phonics, which for kids is much easier when they don't have a mask on and they can see the lips and the movement and all that. So I tend to say, especially if they're under the age of 12 and under, where there is no vaccine to have anyways, that I would be in favor of making it optional. If the parents want their child to have a mask on, they send the mask in and they have it. Another chair had the opposite feeling that I did and said, so what I suggested, or what I told the superintendent is I would bring it in tonight for discussion and see what you 3 are thinking, and maybe I'm the lone holdout here.
I mean, I teach the young, obviously, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and they had the hardest time learning letter sounds this year, more than any other year. And I teach it the same way every year, same skills. And I found it where I had no choice but to pull down my mask to show them the right way to pronounce certain letters, and had to have them do it as well. I think the mask was a burden to their learning. It hindered it. It was much harder for the younger ones to be able to focus on the right pronunciation of things, the way you form the letter sounds, and I don't see how a speech pathologist or speech therapist could do that with a mask on.
Michael, you want to talk?
Yeah, I just wanted to fill out a couple more details of what others have said. So Stephanie Foss is back from her maternity leave. Glad to see her. We put her right to work to weigh in on this, and she strongly recommends that at the elementary level, and I constructed this with her, that at the elementary level we do have mask wearing take place when there is summer school. And that at the secondary level, where over half of our students are vaccinated, that we not require masks at the secondary level when summer school is in session. And we did hear from a second elementary district school committee chair that supported our recommendation of including masks. We did hear from one elementary school's teachers union that also supported the wearing of masks during their summer school program.
Did it happen to be the Norse Teachers Union?
I have not heard from the Norse Teachers Union on this topic, so, yeah. So anyway, I'm not it's your, and I was hopeful that we could try and come up with the same practice across all 5 schools, but that's, I think, less important than you all doing what you think is best. And I wouldn't, like, if you decide not to go with masks, I wouldn't then try and compel one of the other districts to go with masks. So, yeah. I mean, to also not go with masks,
Right.
excuse me, so.
So they're not vaccinated. So even though case counts are very low in the community, which is a good thing, I think the unvaccinated elementary school kids for 3 hours can wear masks. They're used to it. They've been doing it. They should just continue. I think it's really hard when you make it optional and you see another child has to wear a mask and another child doesn't have to wear a mask, having the teacher trying to enforce that between different students. I know my own child will have a very hard time if he sees someone else not wearing a mask when I'm telling him he needs to wear a mask. So it's 3 hours. They're used to it. Kids are resilient. I think phonics can be taken outside under the tree, and then they can not wear masks outside. So I agree that we should follow the guidance as it is written.
Is the guidance, does it go beyond what DPH and DESE calls for?
There's
No,
option.
I mean, Desi's saying
Optional.
it's optional for
Right.
mask wearing during summer, so you can do it or not do it. And just to be clear, following up on Julianne, this would only be indoors, right? So if you were outdoors, we would not ask people to wear masks
Yeah.
at any age. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, there's no more detailed guidance from the state on this.
I think this follows the guidance of people who are unvaccinated are still strongly encouraged to wear masks until they're vaccinated. So.
I think it's a heavy debate both ways. Like, I hear what you're saying, but I totally go the other way. And we've followed DESE for everything. The teacher's like, oh, we can't do that. It was, no, DESE saying we can't. The fans, we can't turn the fans on. DESE said we can't yet. But now DESE's saying it's optional. We're saying, oh, now we're not going to listen to DESE. So I feel like it's either, do we listen to them all the time or do we not?
I think DESE
That's a
is
hard one, too.
recommending that we follow. So DESE is saying that we should follow the guidance and continue indoor mask wearing for unvaccinated children.
I don't think that's what Desi said
It's not in the
yesterday.
write-up that way.
Encouraged but not required.
Encouraged.
Right.
Yes.
This is probably for Principal Pluta. What's the odds that learning takes place outside?
We still have a couple tents that we left up for learning outside. We do have trees with shade, like Julianne said. I think I agree with Julianne where someone said, how do you enforce it? So if we make it optional and parents are deciding whether their child is coming to school with a mask or not, then it's up to the teacher to enforce it, and that is really hard. That's like one more job. As much as I hate to say it, I think they should wear the masks.
To be clear, I'm not in favor of the kids having the mask, but I'm assuming we have not asked the question about our staff. Do you know which staff members are vaccinated, which are not, or you didn't ask that question, right?
I think the staff has given the nurses the information if they felt like they wanted to, but
you
we're
didn't
not,
require
we
it.
can't.
Our attorney says that we cannot compel people to give us that information. And our guidance is saying it's required for adults to wear a mask if they are not vaccinated. It's an honor system, we're not checking it.
So
but,
I
yeah.
go back to, if we're gonna have the kids wear it, then every adult, everybody over 13 in that school is going to wear a mask regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not. So
That's
to me, I feel it needs to be an
what we're
all or
saying for
nothing.
when summer school's in session now, yeah. That everyone in the building would, adults and the kids, during the time of summer school.
And my teachers know that if they're standing in front of a class, they know that they would have to wear a mask in order to get the kids to wear the mask, because as a role model, they would do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we can ask the teachers to enforce mask use if we're going with a recommendation, but not a requirement of masks, because there's no point in summer school if they're wrangling kids over masks the whole time. So
We were wrangling them the whole time during the school year too. So I
Right.
look at it as the same there too. All year it was put your mask on, put your mask back on your nose, take it off your head, put your mask over your face. So it's the same, I feel like it's the same if they have to wear it at summer school.
yeah, I mean, in my head, I'm trying to balance the risk with, the risk of not catching up on the learning loss, which seems like it was fairly deep across the nation. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with summer school, is to get kids as far along as we possibly can. So that's why I lean more towards an optional policy. But I think it's a tough call either way.
Right, but this is policy, so we have to vote tonight.
Yeah.
As a policy. We have the recommendation. We either support the recommendation or we change it. Right now, what I'm hearing is the vote's gonna probably be 2-2. So,
I think it's challenging when you have the person who is not wearing the mask is the one that poses the risk, and the child that's sent in the mask who's trying to be protected isn't protected. They're protecting other people. So that's why it's hard, because you give the option to not wear the mask, but then that doesn't protect the ones who feel like they need the protection with the mask. So
Agreed, but now they're
And-
going into stores without them too.
well, it's,
I mean, which
Yeah.
I'm not saying is okay, trust me, I'm not. But I'm like, I picture if your kid's with you in the grocery store and your kid still has the mask on, because you know your kid's not vaccinated, but then they're walking down the aisle and they see a whole family of kids go by with no masks on. So it's the same thing as telling them, well, we're choosing to stay protected right now.
yeah, but they're not sitting in a classroom for 3 hours with them. So
Can I ask a confusing question? I'm not sure, I'd like to ask you to think about what optional means, because if a student, if a family sends their child to summer school saying you need to wear a mask, it's important to our family. And there's the option to not wear one. Another approach to this is that you don't expect the summer school teacher to enforce what the family wants. That may be just too much to ask of the teacher. So the kid comes to school and they put their mask in their pocket. I mean, I don't know.
But I feel
It's
like
already
it's
hard
not-
enough to manage a summer school class as a teacher, frankly. So I don't know if.
Isn't this gonna be a problem with the start of the school year too? Like if they're still saying.
Well,
optional, I
but
mean,
if everybody's wearing one, then that's much easier to manage then.
are you
I'm talking
thinking, are you thinking in September that everyone's gonna be wearing
that's
masks?
what I was going
I
with.
don't know, maybe, I'm not sure how that's relevant. I'm just saying it's, if you have young elementary students where some of them are wearing them and some of them aren't, I think it would be hard to ask the teacher to enforce, your family says you need to wear it, put it on. What if they don't?
I
What do you
don't-
do? And then this
Yeah.
child doesn't wear it. That scenario seems
I don't
difficult.
think that's the responsibility of the teacher.
Okay, that's what I wanna
I think that's the
clarify.
parent-child
No, I agree.
responsibility.
That's exactly
And
right.
if we say that, if the guidance that came out now says, school's done, masks are not required, they're encouraged or recommended, but it's not mandated, that the state has now said, this is not our responsibility. This is back on parents to determine what's the best course for their child and to do it that way, which I then believe takes the burden off of us as the committee and the administrators, because the state is telling us, you're no longer responsible for regulating this. We've lifted that mandate. I understand the points over on this side about it.
I looked, summer camp's the same thing.
Yeah.
They might be going to summer school for the 3 weeks and then off to a summer camp. And the summer camp's gonna be the same thing. They're told they don't have to wear a mask, it's optional there as well. So they're gonna either face that same thing where the parent wants them to keep it on at camp as well as summer school.
it isn't camp usually outside.
Shane's is 50% inside, 50 outside. That's just his. I can't speak for every camp.
Yeah. It's a private camp probably. So, I mean, if someone's trying to pursue a public education summer enrichment for their special education, I think that should be looked at differently.
So I know this doesn't apply to Norris, but based on your previous question, how are you planning on enforcing number 3 at the middle school? Because there you're saying now it's optional and it's up to them. So probably the same thing, right? You're not expecting the teachers to.
Right, that's,
You had a mask yesterday, why don't you have
that's
it today?
as it is in Stop and Shop now or whatever, you're expected, you're required to wear a mask if you're not fully vaccinated. So that would be the expectation, but there's not an accountability
Right.
measure to it, yeah.
And the difference here is because we're dealing with children under 13. And there's no,
Well, I mean, that
there's
would
no
be-
vaccine. So
Right.
there's a safe assumption.
Yeah, and that's where we're saying,
And-
what we recommend would be everybody wear one at the elementary level.
So on the 28 students attending the specials, how many classrooms is that? It's 4. No, I'll ask the question.
We wanted 5, but right now it's 4.
So the cumulative of 52, 28 and 24, 52 children are within those 4 classrooms.
No, probably 8. They're 2 different programs.
Gotcha,
One is
okay.
4. Each one is 4,
So you're talking about
Multi-graded.
6 to 7 children per classroom.
correct.
So do we?
Well, we wanted up to 9,
Yeah,
so,
but if you're at the 6 or 7,
You're way spaced out.
right,
Wow.
I was gonna say that.
right?
I mean,
Does
you're
that change your
beyond-
thought process?
You're
at all?
beyond the
Nightmare
6
was
feet.
over.
It's
You
never
keep
over.
more than 6 feet, 8 feet apart?
I mean, if there's only tops 10 kids
We
in a
want to
classroom.
add to that, this protocol, that if they're keeping 6 feet, that they can take their masks off. But I think if they're not keeping, I don't feel that they're going to keep 6 to 7 feet. And I feel like we should do what administration wants to do and is recommending. So 6 to 7 is a nice small number, which is great, but it's still the unvaccinated population. I'm a little bit of a rule follower when it comes to this.
Is that a workable compromise, that if, in the event that the teacher is able to keep the children more than 6 feet apart, at that point in time, they could remove their mask, but if she had to bring them, he or she had to bring them closer together for a little cohort, they'd have to put their mask on? Is that something that could be managed within the classroom? Or are we making it too
Yeah.
complicated?
I hadn't thought of that angle, it hadn't come up in
Yeah,
other
that's
conversations.
yes.
So if there's
Sorry.
6 in a room, 6 in a room with a teacher.
Because we have 14
I mean,
kids
that's
in a
pretty
room and we
spread
were
out
at 6
if
feet.
you're only.
feet apart.
So it means everybody comes to summer school with a mask in case the teacher's gonna bring them in close and do an activity.
Yes.
Right, and when they're able to be equally spaced out, greater than 6 feet, they can remove their masks.
Well, greater than 6 feet or
Yeah.
4.5
6
feet
greater.
or more?
No, 6. Let's go back to 6, so we
6
don't
or
have to
greater?
argue.
6
about
feet
4.5.
or greater. Yeah.
At 6 feet, we were able to put 14 kids in a classroom.
Yes, yeah, I get it.
So now if there's only 6 kids in the classroom, they should be at about 12 to 18 feet apart.
Okay,
And preschool,
Preschool, they've always been exempt, right,
No,
from the mask?
no.
they had the masks on.
They changed it and made them wear masks.
But preschool is not summer school. Is there a preschool group of summer
Yes.
school?
Yeah.
I would say the same rules apply. If the
Yeah.
teacher's able to keep them spread out
inside.
inside.
I think that's a fair compromise.
All right,
Okay.
let's think it up.
All right, administration has approved.
Oh,
Agreed.
I thought this nightmare was over.
So what I heard is, Julianne, you're gonna make a motion to approve this as amended,
Yes.
and Austin, you're gonna second it?
Can we just state it out, because I'll be typing the minutes later and I
That
just
we're
want to
gonna-
make sure I get it right.
We're gonna, the only adjustment we're gonna make to bullet point number 2,
Yep.
which is in elementary schools, on days where summer school is taking place, mask wearing is required for all staff, students, and visitors who enter the building and cannot maintain 6 feet or more separation.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Any other action for us on summer school? No? Okay. Next, we have, well, so at this point, I'd like to pause and recognize somebody in the audience, Greg. Bennett, who is a now former school committee member, but was with us all through the pandemic and before that, was the senior member of the committee. And thank you for your services to the town of, the citizens and children of Southampton. Appreciate that. Any brief parting words, or?
Just like, I'm glad I've left everybody in good shape, so.
Thank you, Greg. One of Greg had two roles. One role was as vice chair, and the other role was he was our voting member to Hampshire Regional High School. Is Hampshire Regional meeting over the summer? Are they meet in July?
Did any of the write-ins for the committee go through, or do we not know?
We don't know. I don't know that yet. I think we can. We have to do our reorganization meeting would happen in August if we don't meet in July, so we can appoint the vice chair at that point. If the Hampshire Regional is going to meet in July, then we should put somebody in now, even though that August meeting we're going to change it. So maybe just to move things along, you know, I don't have a problem taking it for 1 month, unless there's one of the three who wants to jump on board. Go.
So moved.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Generally during the summer, we appoint one, if I'm remembering right, we appoint one committee member to sign any warrants or things that need to happen. I'll make a motion to appoint the chair to do it.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Last item that I think that will take up the most time is we have the all districts agreement proposal for us. I believe we all attended the meeting in May, on May 12th, where we had a presentation from our superintendent and legal counsel on the document. I know maybe where do you guys want to start? We can jump right into it. We can look, maybe get some feedback from how other committees, I think we're the last ones to take it up.
Oh, they've already met?
Yes.
Yep, could give you a little update if you want on that.
Please.
Okay. Well, just so you all know, the last time you were part of a conversation on this, it was that joint school committee meeting, very well attended, and there was a lot of really constructive feedback that came out that evening, which was then incorporated in the last draft you've received. If you have a color printer, it's in the infos that in red. If you don't have a color printer, it's underlined. So there is, as you all know, a working group. It's got representation from each of the committees. The working group, it seems clear, will reconvene and take up some of that feedback. So our attorney, Kimberly, didn't, in a couple of places where it was wordsmithing, she did incorporate the feedback into the body of the document. In other places, it's footnoted. So that will all be ready for the working group when it meets again. To generalize about the work of the 4 other committees in June, felt really positive about the document generally and the process generally. All 4 of them have spent significant time talking about the alternative apportionment method, which would be, instead of apportioning the central office costs solely based on enrollment, we had the idea of a 10% baseline being divided equally among the districts, and then the 90% by enrollment. The implications of that, the committee said, let's maybe roll that out over 2 years, doing 5% 1 year, another 5%. The implication over time might be a $22,000 or so reduction to Southampton of their assessment, and then that $22,000 would be spread out over the other districts. That mechanism seems to be clearly understood by all of the committees. They didn't all react exactly the same way, but in general, I would say there is not much of an appetite for considering other alternatives to the strict enrollment approach. When I felt it was my responsibility to say to those committees without you all present, Southampton has an interest in being treated equitably, and if the way to do that isn't through some alternative way of looking at the apportionment, and a couple of people use the word typical, we want to do what's typical, then I said, well, what's typical then is to look at some type of weighted voting that would benefit Southampton. And in at least two of the committees, there was consensus support to say, yes, let's not keep looking at this alternative dollar stuff. Let's return to the question of voting power, and that there may be more daylight there. And I think that's where the other committees are interested in exploring more deeply. At some point, there was a suggestion that maybe the committee would have 11 members instead of 10, and then Southampton maybe could have 3 votes, and the others could have 2. But that would be something for the working group to consider and then bring back to everybody. A spin-off of that somebody at Westhampton had, which was a really interesting idea, would be if we went that far, then maybe there could be, it could be codified that the Hampshire regional representatives couldn't both be from the same community, that you'd have to, those 2 members would have to come from 2 different communities as a way to make sure you all didn't run the table or whatever or that didn't get really off in one direction. So that's just one type of way of thinking of returning to the weighted voting topic. You may have any way you want to go with that. I think that's the most objective way I can kind of summarize how it's been playing out.
So excluding the cost proportionate piece of that, were there any other sections that we want to talk about or that you guys had questions on?
Can I just clarify the weighted voting scenario? You're saying that someone wouldn't be able to double represent it, like sit on both committees and then have, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you know what, weighted probably is not the right word to use. Providing more voting power to Southampton. It wouldn't, in this straightforward 11 members, it wouldn't be that the Southampton, anyone's vote would count more than anybody else's. You wouldn't need a calculator or whatever. You would just say there are 3 people from Southampton serving on the All Districts Committee. Mm-hmm. And the other districts would have 2 members. And their votes would all have the same weight.
I see, yep.
Yeah. Thanks for that question.
There was discussion at the joint meeting about what constituted merit when it came to complaints.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if we got any more guidance on that. Like, is there any rubric for?
I don't think that has been explored more deeply. It is noted, but I don't think there was alternative. Oh, let's see. There was concern about what would constitute merit. 2 options were presented number 1, when a complaint is presented to an individual school committee that is a party to this agreement, the chair of the individual school committee will consult with legal counsel to determine whether or not the complaint has merit. So that was one idea. The other one is when a complaint is presented to an individual school committee that is party to the agreement, the chair of the individual committee will share such complaint at the next All Districts Committee meeting.
So in that scenario, I prefer the first one where it's involving legal counsel because at least right now, with the exception of collective bargaining agreements, we all share the same legal firm and the same attorney. So while there may be a complaint in Westhampton and Williamsburg, we wouldn't know about it, and then we get this complaint. But when we went to that firm and talked to that lawyer, if we had that first option, they would already know about those other ones. So they would identify the pattern, and that burden wouldn't be on us. Okay. And also as legal, forcing the attorney to be in there, who has all our 5 districts' best interest in heart, it would be, at least in my view, professional, not an elected individual, determine whether or not the complaint had merit to start with. So I would support that first option as the alternative.
Yeah.
Others? Okay, so now the cost proportionate. So this was, I think the entire document on its face is well done. There's no one committee that's walking away with a win-win on this whole thing. There was a lot of compromise, and it wasn't done over one night. These were multiple meetings over multiple months in the middle of the pandemic, with everything else going on, and well attended by the committee members who showed up, who were there for all the meetings. And there were some, raised voices at certain times, but we pushed forward with this and we sent this document out. The cost proportionate was a compromise that Southampton asked for, to move it out to the committees to see what the other committees felt. And if they bought into it, then it was great. Realistically, I anticipate that Hampshire Regional would potentially accept it because of how that voting structure is currently set up, and not really the others. But I feel that the opposite is that, and if I can, I'll just read something that I shared in that committee, and it's the actual section that comes from the 1966 regional agreement that is silent on the central office, which is why this document is being written. But on the Norris Committee, we seldom deal with this because it only applies to the Hampshire Regional Committee. But this section's title, it's letter D, and it's the voting strength. The total membership of the committee shall remain a consistent 18 members. Each member shall be entitled to 1 vote at all committee meetings. Each vote shall be weighted to reflect the town's relative population size, not student enrollment, population size. The weight applied to each vote shall be determined by the ratio which the population of the voting members' town bears to the total population of all member towns, as determined by the most recently available federal census figures, which is what Michael referred to, having to get the calculator out. So the concept of a weighted vote as it pertains there is not foreign to all the districts, because they're already practicing it up at Hampshire Regional. And do you know, anybody, what the current ratio is for Southampton? What is Southampton's cumulative weighted vote at Hampshire?
49%, I believe.
So maybe we get a surge in population, but we're still under 50%. We couldn't stop anything. The majority could still go through. We don't have a majority of the body. My argument, and I wasn't this articulate at the Zoom meetings because this was already a sensitive subject, is that if we don't hold our ground for the weighted, if this compromise isn't permitted, which it doesn't sound like it's going to be, then we have to hold fast on the weighted vote. The same weighted vote that's used at the regional that everybody knows needs to be applied to this agreement. And if it's 10 members, it's 10 members. Otherwise, we go directly against over 300 years of practice here. The entire reason this country was formed, because it was taxation without representation. I wanted to say that all day. But that's really what this comes down to. We're being asked to pay 55 to 56 cents on the dollar, depending on which scenario you're looking at, and at the same time only be allowed 20% of the say. So I do appreciate the alternatives coming back, adding a member and all that. And I think that, and I'm happy if anybody wants to disagree with me and suggest something different, but I think we go back to, okay, we hear you, we can abandon this idea of the 10%, but we want to adopt the exact language that we're already using in the regional agreement for the weighted vote on that committee, and see how that goes.
But I like the idea of a weighted vote. Where I would disagree is the 18-member part.
Well, I think we hold at 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there'd be, because within the language, certain votes can't be taken and at least one member from every committee's there. So you have the two, which I would want to hold it to 10. So keep that 10 members, but then you apply the ratio to figure out what that is. But the weighted vote is still going to come down to 49 or 40, whatever that number is.
But the voting members from Southampton, together, they would make up 49%.
47.69.
Yeah. So that I like. I don't think that the discussions can always be effectively had in a group of 18. Correct me if I'm wrong. It can happen, but it's just unwieldy. And I think that there are a few members that take up a lot of airtime, have very strong opinions, and don't like our town, to be fair. So if I were to, suggest a price, it would be cost share and weighted vote. I know that's never going to happen. But I think that it makes sense to, get an equal share of the vote and only pay $5 and a dirty old button for your cost share. But doesn't work for Southampton. And we need to be represented if we're going to be paying that much into the system, because that's what's fair. But that's the way, like you're saying, that's how our government is structured. So I'm not going to go to an alternative model for this. It's just not going to happen. So I think there needs to be some form of compromise, and the people probably all know who they are, need to lay off a little bit and compromise. Otherwise, it's not going to get my vote.
So are you in favor of what I said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would take the cost share if they want to do
Great, but it's compromise.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to say another food analogy because.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
So you're saying hold the 10%, like continue with the 10%?
No, I would say, I would give that up. I would say,
Give that
okay,
up.
let's go back to, we can do it by pupil,
Okay.
which is, what's in there. But the votes taking at that committee, because keep in mind, this is the committee that is going to start off next year with the first budget coming out of central office. That committee, that's where the votes are going to happen to approve that budget. And then it's going to filter down to everybody else. So that's where the voting will come in.
Yeah, I agree that we need to be able to represent our population. So yeah, I agree with your 47%.
Yeah, and I believe most of the big votes within there, we put a 2/3 majority.
Well, the only one that's named as a 2/3 vote is the vote on the central office budget. The other votes are simple majority votes for complaint response against the superintendent eval, job descriptions, and recommendations being made to school committee. There's really not that many.
Right, but the budget is really, it's the dollar. So Southampton in itself couldn't stop that budget, but we could have a loud voice.
Right.
At 47% of it. If we were able to get one more town to say, hold on, let's stop and look at this.
Right.
It could prevent, actually, no, it would prevent the budget, right? If Southampton voted against the budget, it would kill it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You would need it 2/3 to pass it.
Right.
2/3 of the 10 votes. And then, if you have 50% of that, then yeah.
Right.
Well, or they could compromise, and then we could get a 2/3 vote, right?
Right, we would
on the
have-
budget. So it wouldn't kill the budget. It would
Right.
just force people to compromise. And the alternative thing is, if it's weighted by population of the town, they could take some of the people that voted against the override in our town. Just kidding.
So the first part where we're live, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not pulling any punches anymore. People need to vote and they need to support education. So that's where I'll always stand from here until I'm in the ground. So yeah, I think that the weighted vote is a good compromise because it forces compromise going forward. It's not just right now, but we'll always have to work together. And that's what people said that they wanted. They wanted us to all come together. And so if they actually mean that and not just, I'm trying to get as much as I can for my own town, then that's a good compromise.
The-
But
I was just, well, I guess that's right, Greg's not a member now. I was saying, I was gonna pass on the idea that the other school committees were very interested in hearing the multiple voices on your committee, which is what you're doing, so, yeah. And, I don't know that the $1 million central office,
Did they think I was a Lone Ranger?
I'm not saying, but, the $1 million budget for central office benefits and everything like that, I don't know that historically much of that's been particularly controversial, but,
Does this seem like it'd get better support from the other towns where if it's to pupil enrollment for cost sharing? That's what we're suggesting, right? Pupil,
We would stay with the traditional,
the traditional.
well,
is that traditional?
that's a good question. Remind me, Bobby, what is the difference, there is a difference. What is the difference between how you traditionally did central office and you did Hampshire Regional?
For the assessment piece, so central office is by school, where the regional assessment is by town. And then the assessments for the towns are done on a 5-year rolling average. And the assessments for the school are done on the previous year's October 1 report counts. And it includes vocational, whereas the assessments to the towns don't include vocational.
So I think we would stay with the way the superintendent's allocation traditionally has been done. Because that's what everybody's comfortable with, unless they wanted to entertain a different version, which I'm not thinking there is. But all votes taken would be based on the weighted vote of the population of the communities. So next steps, do we need to, there's no vote here.
no,
so-
no. Well, you could, you're welcome, of course, to vote on anything, but what the other committees did was really give their feedback to their working group representative to then bring that feedback to the next meeting of the working group.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none. Any other business?
Not yet.
Before we adjourn? Okay. Our next meet, as a reminder, we voted to move when the school committee regularly meets. We will now meet, well, I propose that we do not meet in the month of July unless needed for an emergency purposes. And then we move to our new schedule, which is the second Wednesday of the month at 5:30 PM. And
Here.
until further notice, the meetings will occur here in this room so that we can do a live broadcast. And by August, I believe we will be able to do a simultaneous YouTube broadcast, which will achieve our hopes of bringing in the masses, even remotely, as we found to be beneficial in Zoom. And then I will work offline with Easthampton Media to see what we need to do. They have some options they're exploring to get the library at Norris available, but that will not happen before our August meeting. So, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The time is 7:08. This meeting is ended.